Hey everybody, welcome today. Today's a cool day. It's another one of those moments where we understand how these kind of simple connectors can create a paradigm shift of how we view documents and elements on the internet. And that's talking about linking, which is one of the most common things we do when we're using the internet, where we're linking one page to another page and back and forth, right? Or, we link everywhere. That's all we do all day long when we're on the internet. So that's what's kind of cool. We're going to learn, we've learned how to make links before, but the question is, how do we make a link between two of our own pages? And we're going to focus on that today. And then we're also going to look at how to put something onto the server. So let's first look at servers. So there's different types of servers out there. As for kind of prosumers, we might call them, there's platforms, there's many different tiers. One of the tiers is you sign up for kind of a software as a service, a SaaS model, where they're going to help build the website with you. So they build a framework and then you just go into a general user interface and make changes. So those are the examples of like a Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, and so on. And we talked about those previously, where there's advantages and disadvantages to using those platforms. In general, if you're moving to become somebody who's working in industry, it's really good to know how to build your own pages. Even if you're a designer, it's good to learn how to build your own pages. So today we're going to look at one of the ways to store HTML documents on the server in a prosumer way. So there's a few different companies out there that are the most famous for doing this. Let me share my screen here. Those companies are Bluehost, GoDaddy, and HostGator. HostGator is actually owned by Bluehost. Bluehost is this big company that owns a whole bunch of different names of different sites, but it's all kind of under Bluehost. And GoDaddy is one of the most well-known based on their advertisements and so on, and looking for domains and things like that. GoDaddy they both kind of have multiple different structures now, where they lean towards kind of a Weebly or Wix model, where they try to make it easier and easier for you to build websites without knowing how to code. Having said that, honestly, learning how to code just a basic web page and getting to the bootstrap model is going to take you about the same amount of time that you would want to invest in order to build a really nice Squarespace, Wix, Weebly site. And so depending on what you want to do, it's often just a good idea to learn how to do it right out of the gate. Definitely the advantages of those other platforms, so WordPress, Weebly, Wix, stuff like that. The advantages are there's extra plugins and stuff like that to do things, specifically shopping carts. Although there's other tools that you can embed into a WordPress site that'll actually give it the same gravity as those other platforms as well, but maybe not the same way of integration. So keep that in mind. So let's move forward with HostGator. One of the reasons I recommend these, there's another one called DreamHost as well. DreamHost is really nice and people really like the service, but they don't use this thing called Cpanel. And if I go to Cpanel over here, Cpanel is its own software, its own operating system. If we go to the class page, let me sign out of this. If we go to the class site, we'll see working with the server here. So this is essentially what we're going to discuss today. We're going to define an operating system. We're going to learn how to navigate to a cPanel. We're going to upload some documents on the cPanel, and we're going to create a folder and a web document on the cPanel. So when we look at this first part, which is defining an operating system. So operating systems are Microsoft Windows, Mac OS, Android, iOS, Linux. These are all called operating systems. Back in the day, they didn't have the operating systems that were visually usable as we know it. That was Steve Jobs, who spent a lot of time trying to think of ways to interact with users in a way that's more user friendly, so that you don't have to necessarily know how to code in order to know how to use a computer. And so if we look at something like Terminal right here, this was the old school way to essentially use a computer. There weren't icons and backgrounds and things like that. It was literally typing commands into a terminal like this where you're getting feedback. So if I do ls, it shows me the applications and what's on my desktop. And then if I click on desktop here, you can start seeing all the things that are now listed on my desktop, right? Like landfill and so on. So these are the ways that we would interact with documents previously using Terminal. People still use it today, and you will advance to a level where you'll start using Terminal again to start working with servers and stuff, because it's just a faster workflow in general to iterate and build things and pass things back and forth when building web applications and things along that line. But for now, we're just going to build with a cPanel because it's a little bit more user-friendly. So the operating system of cPanel, here we have an example of the terminal here. The operating of cPanel, you could see, does a very similar thing to Terminal, except once again, we get to use these icons and it's more user-friendly to engage with it. Having said that, when we go in here, cPanel is it's its own software. It's its own company that these hosting providers like GoDaddy and HostGator and Bluehost, they subscribe to cPanel. If you created your own server and just started from scratch, you could also purchase a subscription to cPanel. They usually about like $12 a month or something like that. And then you could put it on your server, and then you'll also have something that's user-friendly in order to engage with the server that you might have bought. But that's a little bit more advanced in terms of working with servers than we are going to do, especially when we're just trying to learn how to build a website. So now let's look at HostGator. Once again, using cPanel, and the first interface is actually HostGator's interface, and they're offering you other ways to engage without using cPanel. I'm going to click on cPanel here, and now it takes me to cPanel. And the cPanels might be organized or arranged differently on Bluehost or HostGator or GoDaddy, but in general, they have the same essence of what they're trying to do. You have things like file managers, directories, FTP connections, things like that. You have databases areas, you have domain areas, you have email areas, like if you wanted to create email accounts and send things back and forth, instead of using like a Gmail, you can then tie it directly to your domain. So whatever your name of your domain is that's being hosted on the server, you can make email accounts for. Metrics, you could check out the metrics of your site and who's using it, who's visiting, and where they're coming from. Security. This SSH is once again a terminal type process of integrating with it. And then there's other softwares and quick tools in order to kind of build out quicker templating modules and things like that that you might want to use. In general, and here's some quick things just to install, like a WordPress or Joomla and things along those natures. In general, we just use File Manager. It's got all these tools. It's got all this stuff that we can use, but in general, we just use this one link almost the majority of the time. And this link takes us to a directory full of files here. And the files are going to be stored in public HTML. All the other files here are on our server, but they're not available to the public. Only the things within this folder, public HTML, are available to the public. As a matter of fact, the stuff over here is technically cloud computing. We hear that term bandied about, when people had servers before there was cloud computing, you could put something up onto your server and store it there. And then you could log in from another location and either download it or interact with it. So that's essentially what cloud computing is. It's storing something on a server in the cloud that you have access to from different nodes or different points, moving to other computers, and you don't have to take your files with you. In the public HTML, we have this folder, and we use this for classes, so we have tons and tons of content on here. For this, we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to title that folder Cpanel Linking. In general, you want to keep your folders names as short as possible. You could just use underscore. You don't have to use capitals or anything like that. Not underscore, not capital letters. And we're going to create this folder. Now we have to find it here. Yours will likely have nothing in it if you just start out with a new cpanel. Let's find that here. And here we have cpanel and linking. After that, I'm going to go into that folder. And the coolest thing about cpanel is you actually don't need a text editor anymore. You could actually create your documents even here. You could create a file here, and I could call that file firstpage.html. And it creates that file right here, just like that. And then I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call it secondpage.html here. And then, you know what? While I'm at it, I'm going to do thirdpage.html. And it creates 3 different files. Now, of course, I could create more folders and so on here, or I could click upload and I could drag and drop a .html file into here, and that'll show up in my cpanel. Also images and things along those lines. I don't recommend putting audio or video into your cpanel for the reason of you're paying for storage space and bandwidth. If you start having videos on your page, it uses a lot of bandwidth, and pretty quickly you're going to start getting emails from your service provider saying, hey, you're over your bandwidth usage. You need to upgrade to a bigger plan. Instead, I would recommend just using YouTube in order to make your videos and then embed those videos onto your page. And we could learn how to do embedding of videos later. The same with sound. You could use something like SoundCloud or something along those lines to embed your videos as well. Okay, so now I have my first web page. I could click on this and you could see there's a whole bunch of options that I have up here for this file and how to manage this file. I'm going to click edit instead of HTML editor. Once again, the HTML editor is something like a WYSIWYG. A WYSIWYG is what you see is what you get, is what it stands for. WYSI, I have trouble even. There we go, WYSIWYG. Well, this is some website that's calling itself WYSIWYG. But what you see is what you get is a WYSIWYG. And those are essentially those things where you click on it and you'll see them on Facebook, you'll see them on LinkedIn, you'll see them on all these different places where you could just type text. It turns your text into HTML so it's viewable on the web page. I don't recommend doing that, especially when we're building websites, because it creates a markup language that isn't always HTML and can get a little confusing to work with and manage when we're trying to work with these pages. So in this case, I'm going to click on this and I'm going to click on edit. Okay, now it just takes me to a sheet, which is essentially like Sublime Text and a code editor that I can just start typing my code. So I'm going to just create a basic web page here, starting with HTML. And then I'm going to do the head of the page. And then I'm going to do the body of the page like that. And then within that, I'm going to do the H1, a heading. So I'll say linking web pages. And then I'm going to put a paragraph tag in here. I'm going to get some lorem ipsum. Let's get some lorem ipsum that is, I think they have cheese lorem ipsum. Let's see if there's some cheese. Here we go, cheese ipsum. So let's generate some cheese And I'm going to grab these here, and let's put some Cheez-Ipsum in here. Bravo. Okay, now this is where things get a little tricky. I just made my page, but how can I see my page, right? It's just in this text editor. And then if I go over here and I go to click view right here, which is the most common thing, it doesn't take me to my page either, right? This is the most tricky thing because you're behind a firewall. You're behind a firewall that you had to log into. So therefore, you can't just send that link out to somebody else. They would have to log in to see where we are, which is disappointing. It's too bad that we can't just link on it and it shows us where it is. So instead, we're going to have to navigate to it the cheat way before we really understand how file paths work and things like that in cPanel. The cheat way is I bought a domain from Bluehost. The domain I bought is amazingwebsite.com. Amazingwebsite.com is connected to my cPanel. So then I'm going to go to amazingwebsite.com to view the page that I just created. In this case, the name of our website is Berkeley City College. Let me find it here, the folder that we're in. I believe it's berkeleycitycollege.us. Let me find it. Yeah, there we go. berkeleycitycollege.us. And then after that, I'm going to go down here. And as you can see, I need to clean this up every once in a while. I will be cleaning this up very soon in order to make it a little bit cleaner for the new students because we allow students to use this over the years. Okay, so we're looking for linking. One way to find it is I'm going to do a Command F or a Control F, and I'm going to click linking or link, and it should be there. Let's refresh. There we go. Cpanel linking. And so I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to click on my first page.html, and boom, my first page.html is there. That's rockstar, right? Another thing you could do is if I had created that page before, I could click on this here, and then I could copy it. And then I'm just going to give it a new name, and I could do maybe page2.html. And it creates, I spelled HTML wrong, which is best to always spell things wrong. So then the page2.html, and if I go back over here and I refresh, we'll see that it's the same page too. So you could, there's many different ways to do the same thing, right? So keep that in mind as well. For now, I'm going to delete this one. And now I have first page, second page, and third page, right? Let's go back to the tutorial and check it out. I'm going to close out these pages here. And you can see here we have the cPanel part. This is working with the cPanel, where you have other video tutorials and stuff where you're getting the video tutorial right now and then the image tutorial here too. And this image tutorial breaks it down step by step of how to click and make files and stuff like that. The next step is we're going to go to make a link on our page. So I'm going to go back to mobile web, and now I'm going to click on navigate the file paths. So what is a file path is the question. So we're going to define what a file path is. So we've now learned how to create an HTML file. We've learned how to place an HTML file on the server. And then the important question is, where's that file located? That we just showed the cheat. Go to your main domain. In this case, it's berkeleycitycollege.us for us. And I'm going to go to that domain and I'm going to go find the folder that was created. I'm going to click on that folder. I'm going to click on my document, and then I could copy this document. And this is now the address of that file in the public folder for the rest of the world. So if I copy this and I send it to my grandma is going to be able to see this page, which is awesome. And she's going to be so excited, I'm sure. So then I go over here and you could see that I just kind of put some examples. And then this is just a visual of how it kind of works. So I have a folder in here. Then I have another folder for maybe this homework assignment or this project. And then I have the file path here. So this is our root address, http:// We actually don't see that here now, but if I copy this and I go into where my document is and I paste it, you'll see that it comes included, the HTTP. This is really important to include the http:// because HTML processing, the processing of an HTML page is very didactic. It's very exact. If you don't include that, it's not going to know how to use it. So you got to make sure use the HTTP:// and make sure you have it written exactly correct, or it's not going to work as well. Things to not include. Don't include spaces. If you include a space on your document, let's do it and you'll see what happens. So I'm going to go on the server and I'm going to create another file. And I'm going to do first space page.html like that. And I'm going to create that file here. And you can see the space there. I'm going to go back to the server. I'm going to refresh. Sometimes there's some caching too, and I'll talk about that after I show this. So then we have the first page.html. I click on that, and then I'm going to copy this link here. And check out what this link looks like. It replaces the space. If I zoom in here, it replaces the space with the %20, right? That's no good for a domain name. We don't want to have stuff like that. So try to keep your domain name semantic, where it's kind of named what you want it to be. So, you know, puppy page 1 if I have a website for dogs. Dog food.html if I'm describing dog food and things like that, right? So do that. And then secondly, don't put spaces. And if you keep them short also is another really good trick, because already this is one really long mouthful of a domain name, and I want to try to keep it as short as possible. So if I have to share it with somebody else, it's easier to share. So those are things to keep in mind when you're creating domain names. All right, I'm going to delete that, zoom out a little bit, and save. Okay. The other point I was bringing up was caching, and that's not C-A-S-H, it's C-A-C-H. So caching is a process where essentially the page that you created, you're looking at an old page on the server. That sometimes happens, especially if you have a class server and tons of people are using it. When you refresh the page, sometimes the server is still populating older pages and it's not giving you the newest page. Techniques to help with that are, for example, using on our, let me share my full screen. If I'm using Chrome, if I go to File and New Incognito window, those are often really good. Private browsing windows are really good because they don't keep a cache or a cookie from the past, and they show you the most recent page that you're looking for, and they repaint the page every time you look at it. So that's one good debugging thing. If your page doesn't seem to be updated, first check your own browser. It might be your browser like Chrome, Safari, Brave, Firefox that isn't updating it. So use the private browsing window or delete your cookies. There's also developer tools beyond this that you could go into to turn off caching on your page as well as you get more advanced doing this. But the simple stuff is just open up a private browsing window, look at it there, and if it's still cached, if it's still showing you the old page, it might be the server and you might have to wait a few minutes for the server to refresh. So keep those things in mind. Okay. Another thing you sometimes should do is refresh within the server as well, just to see your updates. So if I make a new page or I upload something, sometimes I want to click reload and it'll reload those changes, and it didn't happen natively on its own. So keep those type of things in mind. That could be really helpful as a trick. I'm going to delete this one now just to keep this thing streamlined and sleek. So now I have first page, second page, and third page. So if I go over here, and I have my first page, Well, now I need to create a link for that page, right? So let's go back to the tutorial. And we can see that this is kind of the structure. This is what's beautiful in Apple and the Mac OS is they actually visualize stuff this way. You could visualize it in your Finder. And that kind of, it's a good guide to show you kind of how these folders work and how we navigate through them in a visual way. So I think that's a nice visual tool to see how things are actually stored on the computer, so you could kind of understand how those file paths work. And keep in mind, every folder gets a slash. So if I were to go to, let's go to Amazing Puppy website. Let's see what we find here. Here, frankies.org. Let's go with puppyup.org. So if we look at the domain address of this website, I'm going to bring this back over to my HTML editor, and then I'm going to zoom in again. If we go back over here, we could see, you could see all these slashes. That means all the different folders that this file is in. So this file is in a category folder, then it's in a puppy up blog folder, and then they have this key here or token that's essentially the equivalent of our .html file. So at the end, it would be like first page .html, like that. And that just shows the way that it's structured on their server. And you could go check any other website and you'll see how many folders there are and where they're placing things in their folders as well from other web pages. Okay, so this full link is considered an absolute link. The same address, if it's all in one folder, right, would be firstpage.html. And if firstpage.html is in the same folder as secondpage.html, it'll look in that folder in order to find it. So we have second page HTML. So a relative link will link to the other one as long as it's in the same folder, or as long as you're putting in the slashes of the file structure in order for it to navigate to where that folder is. If we can't navigate to it specifically, if it's not on our server or not in our folder, we have to use those absolute link paths, which is the full link path of our page. And so that's what we kind of cover here when we talk about absolute file paths here. You could see that it's in the same folder. Let me zoom in here a little bit. You could see index.html and jealous.html are in the same folder. So we could just use a relative link to each other. And here we're using the full link to jealous.html. And this is the result here, making the jealous link.html. And then down here, we are also using a full absolute link on this one. So these are our different file paths. So I'm going to grab this link here, our absolute link, and I'm going to paste it here. And this is just the ahref. If you remember, you don't have to, but it stands for a hypertext reference equals. And then we have the domain address. And then after that, we have the title of our link. So I'm going to change this link instead of ajealous. I'm going to change this to page 1. And then I'm going to change this absolute link to firstpage.html. And then just for kicks, I'm going to then go like here. I'm going to make 2 separate navigation panels. And you know what? I'm going to put breaks between them. We learned breaks before. It's just a BR just to create some spacing. And then I'm going to copy these. And I'm going to paste these like this. And then here I'm going to put in maybe a heading. And I'm going to say absolute links. Absolutely. We'll just do absolutely. So we have firstpage.html. Now we have to do second page and the third page. So if we go back always make sure you spell things correctly. That's something that I even still do to this day. I'll just think that I did page 2, page 3, but maybe I spelled it wrong, and then I'll be checking and I'll say, what's the problem here? And oftentimes it's just I said second page HTML instead of page 2. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to paste that. And then the third page, I'm going to go over here. And if you remember, you don't have to copy it. And I'm going to paste that here. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to save changes. And let's just delete this stuff for now to keep it clean. Save changes. And then if you remember, I'm going to go back to my main site, whatever my domain is that's connected to my public._HTML folder. Then I'm going to go to Cpanel Linking. I'm going to go to first page. And now I have page 1, page 1, page 1. But I think this should take me to page 2, which is currently blank. And this should take me to page 3. So let's update that. So I'm going to go over here, and I didn't update this to page 2, and then this to page 3. And I'm going to say, when you're working with these, it's a good idea to have multiple tabs open. Sometimes what I like to do is I might open up a whole nother browser altogether, especially if I'm having that caching issue. So I might open up Brave, for example. I like Brave because it doesn't store my data like Chrome might. I believe Firefox is probably pretty good for that too. But Brave that's kind of their deal, is they mentioned that we're not keeping your data. So then I'm going to go to citycollege.us. I'm going to go to the server. I'm going to find Cpanel Linking. And now I have first page, and then page 2 is going to take me to the second page, and page 3 is going to take me to the third page. So just so we know that it's working, I'm going to take this code from the first page. Let's zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to copy all this. So how would I copy this? Well, it looks like, first of all, what's amazing about oh, here we go. Okay, I thought I didn't even have the bottom tags on there looking at it. We're closing the body. And we're closing the HTML. Cool. Okay. So the next part, what we're going to look at is we're going to copy this. And there's many different ways to copy stuff. So I could just copy it like this and Command C, Control C, or right click copy like this. And then I'm going to go over here to the second page. I'm going to click edit and I'm going to paste. And then here I'm going to say, second page, and then I'm going to say absolutely 2. Actually, I'm just going to say absolutely. You know why? Because what I want you guys to realize that this is how menu bars work. And so the menu bar will stay the same on all the pages. That's what we're going to do for this. Okay. So now I'm just going to have second page here, and I could put in some different cheese lorem ipsum in this case. I'll grab some other cheese for my second page and I'll paste it. I think what it wants me to do, it wants me to move my paragraph tag up here. That's what it wants. It doesn't want all these other tags to be inside the paragraph tag. If you remember, that's the recursion thing. It doesn't want the H1 and other stuff to be inside of it. So, okay, I'm going to save the changes. Looks like we fixed that issue. And now we have page 2, and then let's do page 3. In this case, I'm going to Command A or Control A, and then I'm going to right click copy. And then I'm going to go over here, and here's the third page. And I'm going to click edit, and I'm going to paste. And then I'm going to put third page like so. And let's grab some other cheese ipsum here. And I'm just going to do one paragraph this time. That's my second page. I'm going to close that. I'm going to keep my first page. and paste. Save changes. And let's go check out our page over here. Refreshing. It's even telling us what time they were refreshed. And I have page 1, absolutely. Page 2, second page, and page 3. Okay, so these are 3 different links that are now linking to each other because we put the absolute link of their address that we found here. So we could copy this absolute link here, and then we pasted it into our link in order to make that page. All right, now let's make one with relative links. So I'm going to go back over here. Let's fix this paragraph tag. On our first page. I'm going to save that. Okay, now we're going to do another, by the way, another thing to keep in mind is don't use H1s over and over again because the search engine is going to look for the H1s and think that that's the most important content of your web page, especially for navigation, which is not your most important content, right? So make your most important content inside that H1 because they look at it as like a headline from a newspaper, the most important thing from the newspaper, or most important thing from the web page. So over here, I'm going to do an H3 like this. And then I'm going to update that, and then I'm going to create another H3. And this one I'm going to call relatively absolute. I'll just say relatively linked. Like that. And then I'm going to go grab, might as well just grab the code that I had before of my links before. Let's copy these and paste those in here. With the big difference being, I'm not going to include the berkeleycitycollege.us. They're all in the same folder, so I don't need a slash. And I'm just going to put third page.html. And that's the relative link because it's going to just look for the file itself. And then I'm going to do that again with this one. Second page, and then first page. Save. And now if I go back to my page over here, refreshing, it didn't update like we mentioned before. Let me save this again. Maybe I'm loading the wrong page. I'm loading the third page. Here's our first page. And there it is, relatively linked. So now when I click on page 2, it takes me to page 2. Page 3 takes me to page 3. Page 1 takes me to page 1. Notice I also have a link for page 1 so people can just click on the same page as well. That's fine. That's very common practice to just keep the same page you're on as well for them to click on. And a lot of times we know page 1 as home. All right, let's finish this up. And I'm going to copy this here of our relative links. I'm going to add it to the third one first because it's already open. And then I'm going to save. And then I'm going to add it to my second page too. And that's already saved. And now I could refresh over here. And now I have relatively linked. If I go to page 2, that's also relatively linked. And page 3 is relatively linked. So there you go. That's how you work with the server. And that's how you link the other pages. Let's go back to our main site over here. We kind of skipped around here. So this is how we're breaking down the relative file path, exactly what we had just mentioned before. And then these are additional anchor tags that you could play with here. So linking to external pages. So maybe you want to create a link to Google. We've already kind of done that before, but Google, it'll be an absolute link because it's not on our server. And then in this case, if you wanted to open a new window, you can include target blank, and then it'll open a new window for you when you're going to link on it. So if I click on this, it's going to open up a new window to take me there. Let's look at linking to page regions. These are really cool, actually. So linking to page regions, you could click and it'll make you jump to a lower page. I know when I did something like that, I was like, oh, wow, now I really know how to code because I'm able to do a jump from one part of a page to another. That's kind of a cool feature to do. So you could jump around to different parts of the page. And then you could also turn an image into a link. So this image is from somebody else's server and not showing anymore, but here we can do one that'll show. So let me copy this here. Let's go to our third page and let's put it above our link area. And we're going to paste that here. And so what you'll see is, you'll see that recursion again that we were talking about before. So we have the link here. We have the bracket of that link closing. And then within that link, instead of the name that we usually put, we did image source and we added an image. So let's go find an image. I'm going to delete this one and let's go find an image from the internet. So let's go to cute kittens and we'll go to image search. This one's pretty good. I'm going to right click. I'm going to open image in a new tab. And we can see that it's the full address. Be careful, they're not always the full address. Make sure you're getting the full address with the .jpeg, .gif, .png, etc. And then I'm going to go back to that area on my third page. And I'm going to paste that absolute link to the image. I'm going to save it. I go over here, and when I go to page 3, I now have the kitten picture, and it's a link. Where's it linking us to? It's linking to another page. So let's go over here, and we are going to, first of all, let's make the picture bigger. So let's make it 500 pixels. 500 pixels. Added some inline style there if you want to play with some more inline style. And then I'm going to change this address to www.google.com and save. And we're going to go back over here. We're going to refresh and we're going to click on this and it takes us to Google. So that's how you could create images as well. So there you go. Play around with that stuff. It's pretty cool stuff. Make sure to create different links. Play around with relative and absolute so you kind of understand how they work. And then you could even experiment further and play around with putting it in other folders and playing with the relative links and stuff like that. And remember, if it's in the public HTML folder, super key, super important to remember, especially when working with this, a mistake that we all make over and over again, which don't click on view to get your link to your page. Go to where the page is located at berkeleycitycollege.us or wherever your server is linked to. Click on Cpanel Linking, click on your page, and now you have that page. Then copy it from there and send it to your grandma or whoever you're sharing your stuff with. There you go. Hope you guys have a great week.